I'm Kevin Theriot, Senior Counsel and Vice President of Alliance Defending Freedom's Center for Life. As you go through medical school and residency, you'll likely be pressured to violate your conscience, especially if you have deeply held religious or moral beliefs. Physicians and other medical professionals have traditionally been entrusted with the responsibility to first do no harm. That means doing what's medically and ethically right, no matter what social engineers or even patients want. But that tried and true principle is under attack. There's a movement to force doctors and other caregivers to act more like mechanics than medical professionals. Whatever the customer wants, the caregiver is obligated to give it to them, regardless of whether it makes medical or ethical sense. For instance, you've probably heard of body integrity disorder, a perfectly healthy individual who believes they are an amputee or a paraplegic. If medicine becomes a commodity to be sold rather than a profession to be practiced, that person can be entitled to receive an operation removing a limb, crippling him for life. The good news is medical students and practitioners have solid legal protection for their convictions and their commitment to providing good medicine by doing no harm. Here are some scenarios you may find yourself in, the legal protections you can rely on, and potential ways to address the situation without having to violate your conscience. All of these scenarios are based on actual ADF cases. Imagine for a moment that you are a resident at the local Veterans Administration hospital. Your supervisor directs you to immediately assist with an emergency abortion for a woman who is 22 weeks pregnant. What should you do? First, recall that as a federal employee, you are protected by some powerful laws: the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, Title VII, and the Free Exercise Clause, all of which protect your religious convictions from government coercion. Now, recalling these laws is easier than you might think, as you can just refer to the handy-dandy ADF legal guide for healthcare professionals available for free on ADF's resource page. But next, you'd communicate something like the following to your supervisor, preferably in writing, like an email. My religious beliefs prohibit me from assisting with or participating in an abortion in any manner. Numerous federal laws, including the U.S. Constitution, protect me from being coerced to violate that belief by threat of losing my job or losing an employee benefit. I respectfully decline. Next, let's say you are interviewing for a position at a city-owned medical clinic that provides general, non-emergent care for patients 18 and over. The HR director asks you, do you have any religious convictions that conflict with the requirements of the job? First, you'd remember from your handy ADF legal guide that you're not protected by the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act. That only applies if you're working for the federal government. But the good news is you are protected by Title VII and the Free Exercise Clause, just as if you were a federal employee. Those laws say that your employer must attempt to accommodate your religious convictions if at all possible. And you're also protected by two federal laws that govern any medical facility that receives certain federal funds, which is most, if not all of them. Those two laws are the Church and Coates-Snow amendments, which together say you can't be discriminated against for refusing to participate in abortions and sterilizations. But you're also smart enough to know that the interviewer is not supposed to ask you about your religious convictions, and doing so might violate the law. So you don't take the bait and give them an excuse not to hire you. Instead, you say something like this: I'm not aware of any conflicts, and I can assure you that I'm committed to providing quality health care to all my patients in conformance with medical and legal principles. Next, let's pretend you are in the second year of med school at a private institution that receives some federal funding. One of the required sections of your OBGYN training is learning and practicing techniques for treating miscarriages and performing abortions. Can you request an exemption to the abortion training? By this time, you're extremely familiar with the ADF legal guide, and it says that the Coates-Snow Amendment specifically protects medical students, and you may be protected by the Church and Weldon Amendments, which prohibit federal fund recipients from forcing participation in abortion. So you send an email to your academic advisor or dean that says something like this: my religious and moral convictions prohibit me from participating in or training for abortion. Those beliefs are specifically protected by federal laws like the Coates-Snow Amendment, and the school cannot require me to violate them by discriminating against me in any way. I therefore need to limit my training to treating miscarriages. Finally, let's pretend you work at a private small medical clinic with 50 employees. It recently expanded services to include chemical abortion and abortion counseling, including abortion referral. How should you approach your supervisor to advise them that your religious beliefs prohibit you from counseling for or participating in abortion? By this time, you don't even need to consult your ADF legal guide. You know that the federal statute, Title VII, protects employees from religious discrimination if their employer has 15 or more employees. And there may be a state law that provides even more protection. So you send the following email to your supervisor. My religious convictions prohibit me from participating in surgical or chemical abortion in any way, including affirmatively counseling patients for abortion, or referring them to someone who performs surgical or chemical abortion. I request an accommodation of this religious belief and am willing to work with you to find an acceptable option that protects patient care and my religious convictions. Of course, these are just a few examples of what you might experience. You can read more about your conscience protections in ADF's Legal Guide for Healthcare Professionals, which I'm sure you may have even downloaded by now. Take a few minutes to discuss and practice responding to the scenarios we've talked about. You should have each of them in the documents provided to you. Thanks for listening. Feel free to contact us at adflegal.org if you ever experience discrimination for acting in accordance with your deeply held religious or moral beliefs.